Agatha Christie's novel Death Comes as the End is distinctive among her collection of novels because it's a historical novel, and it's the only one of its kind. This one is set in ancient Egypt in 2000 BC. She got the idea from a colleague of her husband's, Professor Stephen Glanville, and she dedicates the book to him. Now, the inspiration for the plot of this novel comes from a series of letters that Christie had access to that were recently discovered, or discovered around the time she was writing the novel. They were letters from a kind of a semi-powerful Ka priest. In other words, he was a mortuary priest. He looked after a tomb for someone. And he was complaining, sending these complaining letters to his family about the mistreatment of his concubine and how he was going to really just kind of lay down the law when he returned home. Out of this kind of quarrelsome domestic setting, Christie creates her novel. Now, in Christie's story, we have a family, and the patriarch of this family is named Imhotep, and he's a Ka priest, and his family lives in Thebes, but he is currently away in Memphis, taking care of some business. And the story really centers around his daughter, and we see things through her perspective. Her name is Renesemb, and Renesemb has just returned home to her father's house. Her husband died quite suddenly, so she's been left widowed, and she's returned. And she has three brothers. We have first Yahmoza, who's the oldest brother. He's a very mild-mannered, kindly character who is married to a rather bitchy wife whose name is Satipi, and she kind of domineers him and all of the people in the household. Next, we have Sobek. And Sobek is much more confident than Yahmoza. He kind of resents the fact that he doesn't have more power, and because he's second born. And his wife is named Kite, and Kite is a rather stupid woman whose sole interest is her children and caring for her children. Then we have Ippy, who is kind of the teenage son. He's the youngest, and he's unmarried, very confident, and clever, and likes to get away with a lot. Also in the household, we have Asa, who is the grandmother, Imhotep's mother, and she's a very wise old woman. Besides that, then we have some other characters who come into play. First of all, we have one of Imhotep's associates, and his name is Hori, and he is a scribe, and he's a very caring sort of character, and he's always looked after Renesemb, and they talk about how he mended a doll for her when she was a child. She likes to talk with him a lot, and there are many things that she doesn't understand, and he explains them to her. And so we have an interesting dynamic between these two characters. The tension of the novel comes about when Imhotep returns, and he's brought with him a concubine. And this concubine, her name is Nofret, and Nofret comes from Memphis. She's kind of a city girl, and she's very, very cosmopolitan, and the family doesn't like her, and she doesn't like the family. She feels a little bit lost. Renesemb feels this kind of need or duty to try and befriend her, and is snubbed by her. Right after Nofret's arrival, there becomes this kind of tense feeling in the family. So everyone is a little on edge. And then Imhotep has to return to Memphis, and he leaves his concubine behind with his family that hates her. And so what happens is one day Renesemb is going up to the tomb, and she wants to go visit Hori and talk with him. And she sees Satipi come back, and Satipi looks just frightened out of her skull. and she goes, and at the base of a cliff, she finds Nofret's body. Nofret has fallen off of a cliff. Everyone assumes it was an accident. Throughout the course of the novel, however, people begin to wonder if Nofret hasn't come back and is exacting some sort of vengeance on this family. So Hori and Imhotep write letters to the gods, write letters to Imhotep's first wife, pleading for someone to kind of stop Nofret's spirit from killing. And we see a number of different types of death occurring in the novel. Satipi dies; she falls over the cliff, just like Nofret did. We have Sobek and Yakmoza are drinking wine that is poisoned, and Sobek dies from this, and Yakmoza nearly dies. And a young slave boy is found dead. And young Ippy is found drowned in the river, and so slowly, Asa, who's very wise, she and Hori and Renasem decide that they need to really just talk about things and figure out what's going on, and so they kind of steal themselves away from the house, from listening ears, and they try and figure out what's going on. Another character that I should mention is named Hennet. Hennet is an old family retainer. She's like in the English novel, she's kind of the poor spinster aunt who comes to live with the family, and who everyone, she's resented by everyone because she's so cloying, and she's always talking about how much she does for the family and yet how she doesn't want anything. So she's just a very saccharine sort of annoying character who spreads a lot of the discord that's going on in the house. Now, as far as themes in the novel, I think really identity and character is a very important theme, because all along Renasem is trying to figure out if she's different or if she's the same. She comes back home after her husband's death and feels like everything is the same. And Hori says, well, things don't always stay the same, and you seem different. And yet, after Nofret's death, everyone starts acting differently. Satipi becomes frightened. She's no longer domineering and bitchy. We have Kite, who's now asserting herself. And so people seem to kind of doing these role reversals, and Hori tells Renasem that that's kind of the way people are. These are their true colors coming out. So that becomes a very important element. I think the novel's fantastic. Christie does her homework, so she sounds like she really recreates this domestic family in 2000 BC Egypt very accurately. The title, one last thing, comes from a quote, and it's what Asa says to her son Imhotep after he brings Nofret back. She says, "Nofret is beautiful, remember this," and she quotes, "Men are made fools by the gleaming limbs of women, and lo, in a minute they are become discolored carnelians. A trifle, a little, the likeness of a dream, and death comes as the end." And indeed it does in this family. Almost the entire family is killed off by the end of the novel. Now, with such a morbid tale with so many deaths in it, it's interesting that another theme that arises is the idea of life. And of course, Egyptians would have spent a lot of time discussing death and the afterlife, and Nofret comes to the conclusion that just to be alive is a wonderful thing, and doesn't really want to worry anymore about death and what happens after we die, but that we need to live our lives in the present, at the moment. So that becomes a very compelling theme for her as she has to make choices about who she's going to spend the rest of her life with. The novel is, I think, fantastic. Some people might say it's slow. I still give it a 5 out of 5. I really enjoy it. Next time I'll be reviewing Sparkling Cyanide.